This week's episode of the Modern Dealer Podcast, David and I talk CarMax Curbside, AutoNation's store-to-door delivery, and the returning of $77 million to the PPP, Carvana's Touchless Delivery, and the FarmHouse Book of the Week. All that and more on this week's episode of the Modern Dealer Podcast. Welcome in to episode 044 of the Modern Dealer Podcast. My name is David Farmer with Intice, and with me remotely is David Bertoncini. On this week's episode, we have just enough time to get right into our main topic. A few days ago, Automotive News has released an article about some of the nation's largest and most innovative auto retailers are dealing with this pandemic, specifically going through some specific details on how they have changed their process, their business model to meet the demands that customers of today's customers. So now that we've been dealing with the coronavirus now for going on for two months, 10 weeks, I suppose, I think now is a good time to really identify some specific process changes that dealerships can do to really adapt to this new normal. And it actually kind of reminds me of a book that I was introduced back in the mid-90s, and that is Who Moved My Cheese, which is kind of a simple story about how people deal with change. It's a story of four different characters that are stuck in a maze, who are looking for cheese to help them make them happy, nourish them, and it's really is a great way to understand how people deal with change. So I know that we had a couple articles that we talked about featuring in this week's episode of the Modern Dealer Podcast. So I wanted to kind of get your take on maybe a couple things that you noticed in these articles and how people are dealing with this change.
So, hello. And so a lot of the changes we talked about the CarMax approach just a couple months ago in one of the earlier episodes. We talked about what CarMax did with that woman, which was like 60 miles away, and they were going to deliver a car to her. And they said, well, this is going to be our new way. When then there it was less than a year later, this is the way to deliver a car during the shutdown. You know, the process of a curbside delivery, a touchless, just like these pizzas being delivered. I mean, it's a touchless pizza delivery. So adopting processes from other industries to deliver an automobile, which it's the norm nowadays. So, you know, what I've got out of the whole article with the CarMax side of it was, it was something that they had a plan, and it kind of surprises me as you read through the article. I noticed Carvana got on board with it, the 25th of March. It took CarMax until the 14th of April to wait a minute. And they're the ones that actually kind of pioneered this process early, and they talked about, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to deliver cars to people this way. Carvana, of course, that's the only way they can deliver is that way. But you'd expect the big brother of mega used car stores to have their process, to have their shit together a lot sooner than that. It took them a while to get buttoned down a process. I know all these stores were closed for weeks, and they were just dragging their ass to get their process together. Like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We talked about it, and we made ourselves sound good as shareholders, but they just couldn't make the wheels meet the pavement, man. So,
So some of the things that I thought was really good that they featured in this article was that they really detailed specific things that CarMax and Carvana are doing to be able to adapt to this. One of the things that CarMax did, like you mentioned, is they created the CarMax Curbside Pickup. And the process that they put in place, I think they illustrated it extremely well on their website and made the CarMax Curbside Pickup a selling proposition, something that kind of creates something unique for them to be able to market to dealers. The process, the way that they had it set out is, number one, you arrive and call us from your car. So you're a customer, you come into the dealership, you call them. Then we come to you, maintain a 6 feet plus distance. they set up a test drive with the vehicle that they already had picked up, sitting at the curb, so they can take it for a test drive. And then from the car itself, you can call the dealership and you can complete the purchase. So it has the element of being a touchless experience, but really created a process around it, which I thought was really, really cool.
It kind of makes me laugh because I think about, when I get curbside delivery at Carrabba's. I mean, we got CarMax Curbside, I got Carrabba's Curbside. I think I like Carrabba's Curbside a little bit better. And let me tell you why. At least I got a camera outside, so they know when I pull up and I say, hey, I'm pulling up in a white Toyota Tundra. They know when I had arrived. CarMax just say, okay, give us a call. And, a lot of times you get these corporate stores that the phone is going to go to some automated circle and the customer is going to get pissed off and they get caught in this loop of press 0 to be connected. And, to me, that sounds like a couple holes in the process already. They're going to basically finish the delivery from the car. I'm like, that's not going to happen. I mean, how are they going to sign their paperwork? They need to go inside the building at one point or another. This is not, to me, I'm calling bullshit. It doesn't sound like a
Really?
full
Okay.
curbside delivery. Well, I mean, it doesn't sound like a full curbside delivery. I mean, how can they do all the paperwork from the car?
Well, it's the same thing that Carvana is doing in their touchless experience, and whether it's touchless or not, they're still able to complete the transaction basically off-site. So if a
Right.
customer is starting the process online, completing most of the steps prior to coming to the dealership, we know that there's going to be some communication, whether it's face-to-face, whether it's over the phone, whether it's via chat or email. A transaction can be completed and a deal jacket can be created so a customer can just come in, take the vehicle for a test drive, keep that 6 feet distance, and then they can have a full deal jacket ready to sign and go without ever having to enter the dealership the same way that Carvana is delivering the vehicle to the customer.
So pre this, they needed to have quite a bit of paperwork in place. They made it sound like more we're going to get started with a test drive, like the beginning of the process. Like the customer wasn't 100% sold on that particular vehicle. They're like, well, let me drive it to make sure I'm 100% sold on it. Maybe the customer wasn't happy with the vehicle. It just sounded like it was going to be more of a test drive than an actual complete purchase. If part of that is done, then I guess they obviously have like not a DocuSign, but similar process that Carvana has to do a complete online purchase. But it still sounds like there's going to be some holes in the process. And
Well, I think that everybody's trying to figure out what this new process is. So what Carvana is doing, they've created this touchless experience, and again, I think it gets boiled down to just a few steps that a rep has to complete. So they deliver the vehicle to the customer, which doesn't change. Same thing that they did pre-coronavirus, but they've added steps where they sanitize the vehicle right there after they get the vehicle off of the truck. Then the rep leaves the keys and some information in the vehicle, goes into the car hauler, and then sits there and waits. The customer then will have the opportunity to take a test drive, come back, and if they want to complete the purchase, then they
Right.
call the Carvana rep, which all that information is right there in the car, and then they can sign whatever needs to be signed to complete the purchase, and then they're instructed to leave that with anything else, such as the outside lien form, a check, a title to their vehicle, or whatever, in a secure place where the customer does not have to become in actual contact with the Carvana rep. So I think whether it's curbside pickup, whether it's a touchless delivery, I think the same steps are taking place, just a matter of where it's getting done. And I think
Right.
that dealerships can be looking at what Carvana and CarMax is doing to adapt their process.
Got to come up with your own touchless process. But first, they need a digital retailing piece in order to complete that process, if that's what they're going to do. It made it sound like more, we know Carvana has a digital retailing piece in place. CarMax, I haven't been on their site in a while, so I'm guilty of maybe not researching this before I throw my opinion out there. But it seemed like they didn't have enough parts in place to do this digital retailing. But maybe the 20 days it took for them to get their shit together before they rolled out this process, maybe that's what they took the 20 days to do, was to tighten up their digital retailing process.
Well, and part of their digital retailing process is what we discussed 6 months ago in that episode, which we'll link up down below. And they talked about having these I don't even know what they called them, but basically they had customer support centers where they had up to 300 people that were going to be able to communicate online with potential customers and really walk the customer through the process to be able to allow the customer to make a purchase 100% online and either have that vehicle delivered or have the customer just go pick up the vehicle. So I think they have the mechanics of the process in place and they have the technology in place. They were planning on launching this nationwide, I think in February 2021,
21. Hmm.
but they modified the process in kind of rolled out pieces of it, and then modified that approach with the CarMax curbside. So I think if I was looking at designing a process for dealerships right now, I would encourage dealers, and I would take the consideration of using some sort of curbside pickup, and maybe even making it better, as you were saying, like at Carvana Carrabba's
Carabas.
curbside pickup, where you can be notified what type of vehicle. And so I mean, we can learn a lot from the service
Other
industry,
industries.
such as the restaurant industry, which is I've always thought we could learn a lot from how the restaurant industry communicates with customers and how they take them through the process.
It's funny is Lexus motto nowadays is we're in the people business. And, you know, they were the pursuit of excellence for many years. And of course, Grant Cardone said in the 90s, you're not in the car business. And now Lexus is quoting Grant, we're not in the car business, we're in the people business. All the restaurant industries have always been in the people business because, there's a restaurant right next door that, you got Joey's Pizza, Tony's Pizza, Johnny's Pizza. They got every pizza joint, three doors down. So you had to be better than the other one, other than your taste, but your service has got to be great. I mean, you could have the worst pizza, but the shittiest service.
Yep.
So,
One experience that I've really looked towards in the restaurant industry that can be adapted into dealership sales process is how the greeter works within the greeting process, and the greeter works at a restaurant, and then you have the waiter that's actually going to bring you to the table, and then you're going to have the manager come around and say thank you and check in on you. I think that
mhm.
dealerships can really look at that, whether that's pre-coronavirus or post-coronavirus, as inspiration of how a process can be taking place at a dealership showroom. If you think about having a greeter that would greet somebody at the dealership, even we could have a greeter in a position where they are keeping that 6 foot social distancing for a customer as they come in, and guide them into the process. If it's somebody that's moving into the vehicle purchase process, if there's already an appointment that's set, then that greeter could move the customer into speaking to the right customer. And if it's somebody that is considered like a fresh up, then that greeter can move that customer into into a situation where they can invite a salesperson to come and start the process with that customer. And then I also really enjoyed how a restaurant manager would then roam the floor occasionally and do a process check-in, introduce
Mhm.
themselves, thank them for doing business. I think that that's also a piece that dealerships can adopt from a restaurant industry, but not going too far down a rabbit hole. I did want
We
to
always do.
also, yeah, always do.
We do.
I did want to address one of the things that I saw on the another article describing what AutoNation is doing in this post-coronavirus business environment, and I love what the top of that article had said. Almost sound like a poem or something. It says masks, gloves, sprays, wipes, hand sanitizers, single-use pens, and spacing markers for social distancing are becoming the norm at the largest U.S. dealership group. Which
Right.
also I think kind of encompasses the things that dealerships really need to be addressing from a showroom standpoint. is what are you doing about masks, gloves, sprays, wipes, hand sanitizers, single-use pens, spacing markers to really be able to set up your showroom to accommodate the situation that we're in, whether it's going to be long-term, whether it's going to be short-term, whether the governors and the mayors get on the same page and, you know, make it not, mandate that we don't have to do this or we do have to do this, whatever it is. Today, we have to deal with this situation. And it does sound like that AutoNation does have their arms around what they're doing from a process standpoint to be able to implement some specific tools and techniques.
They kind of have their arms around $77 million of like our small business money too. I'm not just saying I was kind of a, dick move on their part, but at least, somebody said, hey, we just took the money that we shouldn't have taken
Yeah.
using all of our other tax ID numbers. We better probably give it back
Yep.
if we know which is going to look good for our shareholders. They look like a bunch of assholes. They're like, oh yeah, we took from the poor to give to the rich.
That's basically what
Hood.
it's doing, right? The payment protection plan really designed for small businesses. AutoNation being a public company with a high, a high value, has access to funds from all sorts of different places, even getting money from the public. They did take $77 million in Paycheck Protection Program funds. They did return it. What it also says, the reason that they returned it is because they found out, or the SBA, Small Business Administration, said, well, you're probably not going to qualify to be able to have this written off as it's supposed to be, as it was supposed to be set up, because they do have access to funds in different areas, and public companies is one of those industries. So they did give that money back. So yay for them, right?
Yay. After being guilt-tripped into returning the money, I was like, you're not going to, like you said, can't write off the money. In addition to, you guys are gonna look like a bunch of dicks for doing this.
Yeah,
the end of the day.
Exactly.
Good stuff, man. So what
So
else?
another thing that AutoNation did, as far as making their process post-coronavirus friendly, is that they instituted a store-to-door delivery service across all of their dealerships. And I think that's one thing that dealerships today really need to be looking at, is not only worrying about just being open, which is a big enough worry the way that it is right now, but that's kind of being reactive. Most dealerships across the country right now have furloughed, many of their employees, their sales staff. Some of those dealerships are now bringing those salespeople back. We've seen across the country 40, 50, 60% drops in overall sales over the past few weeks. I think this week specifically, we're starting to see more dealerships open, more dealerships being able to bring customers into their showroom environments. But again, that's kind of from a reactive standpoint, is reacting to what the president is saying, what the governors are saying, what the mayors are saying, and just kind of reacting to that business. I would recommend that dealerships be very proactive in making some process changes, not to react to what coronavirus is making us do, but kind of moving past the reactionary, meaning is what can use this opportunity to make your process better, make it to where, regardless of what's happening in the world right now, what would be the right thing for customers to make it easier, to make it faster. The store-to-door delivery, the curbside delivery, the touchless delivery process. All of these things, I think, are proactive measures that some of our most innovative and largest dealerships across the country are doing right now. So the question is, for dealers that are watching this right now, is what can you do to be proactive, to be able to make your process better, regardless of the situation that we're in?
That's a good question for a lot of those stores, exactly what that process is going to look like for a store-to-door delivery. Is that including your service cars, your cars for service, your obviously your sales deliveries is really, what you and I were talking about. But when I've read that article, and in the same paragraph, they said they furloughed 7,000 people, but now they've adopted store-to-door delivery. Could they use some of those 7,000 for
I
these
think they're bringing
store-to-door
them back. I
deliveries?
think
They
people.
did? Okay.
I think they're starting to bring those customers back. I actually talked to one of our dealers just the other day, and they had planned on starting to bring furloughed employees back this week. Actually, starting yesterday.
So I talked to a dealer in up north today, and he said he's got a problem with furloughed employees in their state. After everything's all said and done on unemployment plus the extra kick in from the government,
Six hundred
people are
bucks a
making
week.
plus, yeah. So they're making net $6,200 a month. And if you're
Wow.
making $5,000 a month and now you're getting 6,200 take home, they don't want to come back to work. So
Wow.
they're I was talking to a dealer. He says, "Yeah, I've got a problem bringing people back, man. These guys are
Then,
just like
yeah, fire them
a
for
whole."
cause. Then that's really what you'd have to do. So being furloughed is being furloughed or temporarily laid off is different than firing somebody. I mean,
Mhm,
if you furlough somebody or you lay them off, they would qualify for unemployment. And I know
mhm,
that's state by state, but for example, in the state of Florida, if you fire somebody, they don't qualify for the unemployment if you fire them for cause. So that is one of those differentiations, and it definitely can be a challenge when you're adding an additional $600 per week to whatever they would qualify for at the state level. That does end up
mhm.
being that does end up being quite a bit of money. That's if you can make it through the process to get the unemployment, which has been a challenge, just like the PPP program, which
Mhm.
we're still at a point where we've not gotten that for Entice. We got some email communication finally back today from the bank saying we're still in process, we're still waiting. So we'll see what happens. We'll make sure to let everybody know for the Modern Dealer podcast for sure.
Yep. So,
So lots of great stuff. So this episode, we are keeping it a little bit shorter, David. This is going to be kind of the new format going forward. We always like to experiment a little bit with the Modern Dealer podcast to try to deliver as much value to our listeners. So it's going to be a condensed one section, one segment, going to be somewhere around the 25, 30-minute mark. So we're actually coming to the end of episode 044. We do hope that everybody is enjoying this. And if this is the first time that you're catching the Modern Dealer podcast,
be sure to subscribe, share, and like the Modern Dealer podcast. If you're catching us on YouTube, be sure to turn on notifications. And when you subscribe, ding.
ding, turn on that bell.
I just got a notification from another thing at the exact same time through my headphones. I was like, what was that? Yeah, so be sure to do that. And if you're catching us on iTunes, also be sure to subscribe and to like there. But other than that, we've got a couple things to roll through. Or how are we doing?
Yeah, no, we got a few things to go through. If you got your 3 tips ready, we can still take that. And I think the book of the
Boom.
week this time will be a farmer's book of the week, and it'll be
Yeah, man. Who moved my
the
cheese?
Who Moved My Cheese. Great book, Spencer Tracy, I think the gentleman's name is. Again, it's something that I was introduced into the '90s. It's a short book. You
Very
probably read
short
it
read.
or you probably read it in an afternoon. But it follows the story of 4 mice in a maze and how they deal with change, the change being in the story that there's no more cheese, and the people, the mice can either stay there hoping that the cheese comes back, or
Mm-hmm.
put on their shoes, get out in the maze and make it happen and find that cheese. So that's what we're recommending for all of our Modern Dealer podcast listeners to put on your shoes, get out there and find your cheese. But with
And
that,
finally, that segues into my 3 tips exactly.
we'll move into Bert's 3 tips.
Bing, ding, ding. It's this. My first tip is obviously we talked about a touchless, a contactless delivery process. whatever that process is in your store, make it part of your marketing and make sure your customers, a lot of people are talking about it, but really, start it from, hello when your first contact before the customer reaches the store, just to let them know what the expectations are. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and I forgot to send it to you, but I had my vehicle serviced, and it was supposed to be, this
Yes.
touchless service. Had the 400 serviced, and it was pretty much that I had to ask to have them sanitize the vehicle. This Clorox 360 machine. I was like, "Don't you guys supposed to spray the inside?" They're like, "Oh yeah, only at the customer's request." So really kind of figure out what that is, and there's going to be some hiccups. There's going to be some people dropping the ball, and even with other services. I had a pizza guy the other day kind of screw up the contactless delivery. He's like, "Oh, I forgot it was contactless." And I was like,
You
"Dude,
got
come
to
on."
remember there are people in the process. I mean, it's hard enough to train salespeople and personnel to follow a process under normal business conditions. We're not on normal business conditions right now, so the speed of the crew is the speed of the chief. Making
the
sure that
leader.
you're training, that you're identifying the sales process, what those process changes are, and then drill it. I'd use this time to train, drill, rehearse that entire process.
The second part of my tips are in the process, being your solo test drives and how to make sure that, how are you going to make that a secure process, for number one, the company, because, there could be somebody rolling off the street, give you a fake ID, and they just got a free car. So whatever measurements, I'm pretty sure each store is going to put in their own measurements to prevent that. And your store to door, number three, the store to door delivery process, making that really clear if it's your store to go or whatever it is. But put that out there. I've heard a lot of people declining the home delivery,
Sure.
and they rather come to the dealership, is the feedback I'm getting from a lot of GMs across the country. They're saying
A lot of
out
people
of,
are getting
8 out of 10 rather come to the store than you come to their house.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
So
It kind of reminds me. It kind of reminds me of a few months ago when I bought the new iPhone. I had that AT&T delivery experience where that was really the only. I could either have my vehicle or have my phone sent to me in a week to 10 days, or I could have somebody drop it off that afternoon, and having that in-home delivery experience. So a lot of companies have been, experimenting with these, store to go type of experiences. I think having it, offering it to customers, even if a customer doesn't opt in for it, having it there really shows that you're willing to do that and add that transparency.
It's building value. So making the customer feel good and comfortable about your process.
Yep.
So, and that's all I
Absolutely.
got to say about that.
All right. So that's episode 044 in the books for David.
And David.
That's a wrap.
You're a dick, David.
Oh, I'm a dick.